Who's winning? And who's up shit creek without a paddle? This is your stop for unbiased election projections with BS free talk, analysis, and one cranky politico's insight into the very future of the world you live in. Broadcasting from the gateway to the motherlode in Waterford, California. This is the Election Recon Podcast. And now, he's carpet-bombing partisan zealots back to the Stone Age by delivering cold, hard reality to the fanatics first class. Your host, Army veteran, political operative, and election junkie, Josh Whitfield.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Election Recon Podcast. I'm Josh Whitfield. Alongside me is we have taken away the probationary title. She is officially the co-host of the Oasis of Reality, the Election Recon Podcast. Alyssa Silva is with me. It is August the 25th. She's very excited. It is August the 25th, 2022, and we have a good show for you today. First and foremost, lest I forget, as I always do, the cigar of the day is a Perdomo Reserve Champagne 10th anniversary. It's a good smoke. Double Toro and cut, I think. I don't know. I could be wrong. I do like smoking Double Toros. I hope it's a Double Toro. My good friends at the Cigar Club, and that's the actual name of the business, they have a shop in Modesto, California, and in Sacramento, California. Very good friends of mine, Alyssa. You know that. Yep. Spent a lot of time there.
And a lot of money.
Well, let's not say that. My wife could be watching this podcast, and I don't. It's not that much money. It's a little bit of money. It's a very expensive habit, Alyssa.
Hey, if it keeps you calm, that's all that matters.
A few cigars a day keep the demons away. That's for sure. So being a member of the club, I get 3 cigars a month. Being a member, and a lot of these cigars that I bring on are from these member things. I smoke a lot of Avos and Loyas and Olivias and Rocky Patels. Those are my 4 favorite cigars. Those are predominantly clouding up my humidor, filling it up. But I like to change it up on the show, Alyssa. I like to keep it feng shui for the viewers. I don't even know if that's correctly used in context. It's way too complicated of a word for me.
I think they appreciate it.
Yes. Alyssa, a good show today. We're going to be interviewing, finally, we got our law enforcement professional. We've been trying for the last 2 weeks to get a sheriff or police chief of some sort. Finally coaxed a police chief to come on the show. Jeramy Young, he's a police chief of a medium-sized town here in California between the Central Valley and the Bay Area. He's also the former mayor of Houston, California, which we know well. Houston right next door here to Waterford, California. Going to talk to Jeramy about, kind of what it's like about being a cop today versus when he started his career many, many moons ago, because he's old.
Not that old.
He's very old and bald. And I like to make fun of him. He's a Niner fan too, which is really hard for me. Being a Packer fan, I have to smoke a lot more cigars because of this.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's hard. It's very hard. I digress. We're going to be interviewing Jeramy Young, who is a former small-town mayor, a current police chief of a medium-sized town in California. We're going to talk to him about crime and law enforcement and what's going on in the world today. In the Grunt's perspective, Alyssa, I'm going to get all kinds of fired up.
Can't wait.
All kinds. Last week on the show, I talked to you about that crazy city councilwoman from Jersey City.
Yes.
and she hit her own constituent and then ran off. Yeah,
And refused to resign?
And she's refusing to resign.
Oh, still.
Still.
Okay.
We're going to talk about that, but in a greater context about the hypocrisy in politics and justice today, because it's very unfortunate that justice has always had multiple standards, but those used to be kind of class. Lower income folks tend to have been more adversely affected by the justice system, and richer, more elitist folks kind of get away with more. I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a political thing. We've all lived in the United States. Rich people get away with a lot more than poor people. I think that's true. But now the double standard is becoming political, and politics have seeped into the justice system, and that pisses me off. So that's going to come up in the in the Grunt's perspective segment. I think it's the justice. I think I'm rendering justice by bloviating my opinion to the dozens and dozens of fans that we have on our show. That's not, our fan base is growing every week. It's pretty cool to watch. Our Twitter account, we're really big on Twitter.
Gotta love Twitter.
On yes, the cesspool of society, Twitter, by the way. On Instagram, I don't think anybody knows us. We're not.
Instagram's hard.
We're not big on the Instagram. Facebook, we used to be big in 2020. That used to be our biggest thing. We're struggling with the old Facebook right now. Because I think they suppress our stuff because we're political, because we have to do this like weird verification process. And I sent in a letter like 8 weeks ago trying to prove I am who I say I am, and the show is what it is, and Facebook has not gotten back to me. So at Facebook, you suck. Just saying. But we're doing all right. YouTube's doing well. But most importantly, the actual podcast and all the podcasting stuff. And Jeff, I'm not going to read all the places that people can find our podcast. It's too complicated. I mess it up. But pretty much wherever you can find a podcast, you can find our podcast.
Pass them to me, Jeff. I'll read them.
Maybe next week we'll let Alyssa read them. Because I get all tongue-tied and flustered, and it's no good. Alyssa, let's go right into it. Alyssa, in the election snapshot, we made a decision. On Monday, it is me. I was not feeling good about where our model was. Lauren and I had a very long discussion about, Lauren is our resident Democrat here on the Election Recon project. She is the math whiz. I had a long discussion with her that I felt I went back and I looked at 21 and 20 and the amount of registered voter polls versus likely voter polls that have likely voter screens. And for all you laymen out there, what that means is the pollsters are trying to figure out who is likely to vote versus who's probably not going to vote when they're asking them about their political opinions. And that's very important, especially in non-presidential years, because the turnout is lower. And predominantly likely voter polls tend to be a little bit more Republican, a little more conservative in the electorate. And I think that's going to be true for the midterms. Despite all these special elections, Democrats had a really good night Tuesday night. They upset Republicans in the New York 19th special election. Almost all the establishment GOP thought that was an easy tap-in, gimme victory, and it was not. The Democrat won by about 1.5 points, 2 points. We'll see what the final, maybe even a point. We'll see what the final election results are. But huge upset for Republicans in the 19th Congressional District of New York, and then the 23rd Congressional District of New York on Tuesday. Another special election that Republicans should have won by a wide margin, and they kind of squeaked by. So a lot of warning shots out there right now for Republicans. A lot of conservatives, a lot of talking heads, a lot of the establishment folks, all out there thinking this. How many times have we heard it all year long? This is going to be a red wave. This is going to be a red tsunami.
Yep.
And we've been taking a lot of criticism because our model has not really shown that. We've shown a modest Republican victory in the House. We're still showing that. But we continue to show a Democrat edge in the Senate. Democrats making some ground in the governor's races. A fairly significant Republican victory across state legislatures in the country. But it's kind of a mixed bag, and we've been saying that since day one. Everyone's been kind of shitting on us. But yet, the election results continue to show that we may be right. But we think we're right for a different reason, other than what all you're hearing on the mainstream media. And I'm going to get into that here as we get into the election snapshot. Let's take a look now at the Election Recon projections as we update on every weekly on Wednesday. As we get closer to the election, of course, we will update more frequently, perhaps daily. To my point, I got off track there. I went into the woods. But what we did is we decided that because there are so many registered voter polls, and these polls are horrendous, Alyssa. They are terrible. Especially the Economist YouGov poll is so batshit crazy. It's hard for me to even accept it in the poll, but we do not put our personal opinions into it per se. As elections professionals, we do make decisions like we do now, that we feel there are far too many registered voter polls, not enough likely voter polls, and we feel like the likely voter polls are of a higher quality. So we made a decision to lower the weight, lower the effect that the registered voter polls are having in our model, and increasing the weight of the likely voter polls, and that has shifted our model to the right this week. So there's going to be a lot of changes we're going to talk about. First and foremost, as you can see here in the U.S. Senate, we have the Democrats down now just a 58% chance to win the U.S. Senate. That's down from 64% last week. There will be a flip, and that, as you can see now on your screens, is the Wisconsin Senate. Ron Johnson, the incumbent senator from Wisconsin, is now leading Mandela Barnes, as you can see on the screen now in our model. That's a flip back from last week where we had moved that seat in our model from red to blue. It's back to red, and that is now leaves the Democrats with a net gain of 1 seat in the Senate. In the House, we have Republicans at an 84% chance to take control of the House. They're going to pick up 1 seat in our model. First and foremost, among the flips, we have 2 Democratic flips this week, Alyssa. That's the Michigan 7th Democrat incumbent, Elisa Slotkin, who is a two-term congresswoman from the state of Michigan, now on top of Tom Barnett for the first time in our model. In the 19th Congressional District in New York, Democrat Josh Riley is now leading Mark Molinaro, who is the loser of that special election in the 19th Congressional District just on Tuesday. Mr. Molinaro is trailing now in the New York 19th. I suspect if Republicans actually turn out, Republicans have a turnout problem right now. It's not Roe, it's not Dobbs v. Jackson, it's not all these things that you're seeing on MSNBC and CNN and all these other mainstream media outlets. It's just a lack of enthusiasm of Republican voters showing up. That's where these polls are getting it wrong for Republicans. And I think that's largely to do, Alyssa, with the fact that Donald Trump's not on the ballot.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of working class, low propensity Republican Trump voters who are just not showing up for these guys.
Not anymore. Everyone showed up for when Trump was in office, but now no one's showing up.
Yeah, I mean, so Republicans have a real problem unifying their party nationally, and that's what's going to ebb a red wave or cost them a red wave year. It's not these ideological debates we see in every poll, like you're seeing here. Let me throw it up on the screen right now. You're seeing in every poll the economy, inflation, the economy, crime, immigration. These are what are leading in every poll. Democrat districts, Republican districts, nationally. Dobbs v. Jackson, abortion is just not there, but yet Democrats are trying to make this argument. Mainstream media pundits keep trying to make this argument that this is what is driving the electorate. And I could totally agree with the argument that it's moved the electorate half a point, maybe a point, as more women are energized over this issue. Maybe independent women have shifted a little bit, suburban women have shifted a little bit back to the left. But by and large, nowhere are we seeing this. Not even in the crap polls like The Economist and YouGov are we seeing this. It's crazy. Let's take a look at the 3 Republican flips we have this week in the House. That's New Jersey 7th, Paul DeGroot. What a great name. He's got the Disney vote.
Yeah.
He's got the Marvel vote
The
there.
Disney adults.
He's got the Disney adults. The New Jersey 7th, Paul DeGroot, Republican, now on top of incumbent Democrat Tom Malinowski. In the Virginia 2nd, this is one that keeps flipping for us. Like the Oregon 5th and Virginia 2nd. Those are going to be the 2 that flip, I can tell, many, many times week to week in our model. They're very, very close in our model. The Virginia 2nd, Republican Jen Kiggins is now on top of incumbent Democrat Elaine Loria. And in the Colorado 8th, Barbara Kirkmeyer, Republican, now on top of Yadira Cavaveo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Cavaveo, Democrat from the Colorado 8th, shifting. Some non-flip races. We have so many non-flips because of the adjustment we made in our model. We'll put it up on the screen now for those of you watching on YouTube. Non-flips for the Democrats. That's the Pennsylvania 10th, the Pennsylvania 12th, California 21st, California 40th, and California 43rd, all moving closer to the Democrats or in favor of the Democrats this week. For the Republicans, a lot of races, our model has moved closer or more in favor of the Republicans. We'll show you that now. And that is the Ohio governor's race, the Colorado Senate race, the New Hampshire Senate race, North Carolina 1st Congressional District, the Maryland 6th, the New York 4th, the Connecticut 5th, the Rhode Island 2nd, the New Hampshire 1st and 2nd, the Ohio 1st and 13th, the Illinois 13th, Wisconsin 1st, Iowa 3rd, Arizona 4th, and in Nevada, both the 3rd and 4th congressional districts, all moving more in favor of the Republican Party in our model. That's where it stands here in the election snapshot. Let's take a little bit of a look now at Biden's job approval, improving a little bit more this week. A lot of polls coming in. Really interesting that President Biden's approval rating improving in the Rasmussen Reports poll, which is predominantly pretty biased towards Republicans as we judge it. However, in a lot of other polls, he's still kind of right where he is, low 40s, high 30s across the board. And that's likely voters and registered voting polls. So President Biden improving a little bit, about 42%, at 41.9 in the Real Clear Politics average of polls. Approve of the president, and 55% disapprove. So about a 5-point improvement in the last 15 to 20 days for the president. That's significant.
It is.
But it's still not healthy. It's kind of now he's kind of gotten back to like Donald Trump 2018 numbers, which, if everyone remembers, Republicans got housed in the midterms in 2018. So Democrats take that with a grain of salt. Let's look at the generic ballot for RCP, both in our aggregate and our model, because we made the adjustment to likely voter versus registered voting polls. The Republicans now have about a 1.2 advantage in our model in the aggregate. In the RCP aggregate, Republicans have taken it back. It was plus 0.2% for the Democrats last week, now 0.2% for the Republicans this week. You can see here some of the new polls this week. Economist YouGov, which I think is just a trash poll. I'm not going to get into it. We don't have the time. I can't stand this poll. I wish it wasn't in our model, but because we are fair and we put the poll, even the polls that we are highly suspicious of. You can read our methodology at electionrecon.com. It's all there. But because YouGov is still rated above a 4 in our poll rankings, our polling grades, that poll still gets put in. But man, I just, every time I look at this YouGov polling, I want to rip my hair out because it's atrocious. It's atrocious. Politico Morning Consult, another poll that I think is just atrocious in how they weight and they're doing things. Both of those polls have Democrats +5. The likely voter polls, a 10-point swing in the other direction. Go figure. Okay, Rasmussen Reports, Trafalgar Group, Republicans +5 in those likely voter polls. And again, we try to explain the difference, but here's the big one that really moved the model for us outside of even our adjustments. It would have moved the model to the right for us, is the NBC News poll. I know a lot of Republicans, they hear NBC, they cringe a lot, mostly because of MSNBC, the cable channel. We actually really like this poll. NBC News, especially when they do work with the Wall Street Journal. This is a highly rated poll for us. We grade this poll much higher than the other polls. Republicans +2. And another poll you don't see here on the RCP aggregate here, those of you watching on YouTube, is the Decision Desk Battleground tracking polls, where Republicans have had a 4-point swing in the last 30 days towards them. And this is because likely voter screens are starting to be implemented by these pollsters, and it's going to move the electorate back to the right in the polling data, which is another reason why we believe likely voting polls have to be weighted heavier, even heavier. They were already weighted heavier in our model. They have to be weighted even heavier now because too many of these media polls are really just becoming push polls for the Democratic Party. And again, that's not partisan. Even our resident Democrat agrees with this. We don't make changes to our model unless Lauren and I agree to it. It takes me, the Republican, and Lauren, the Democrat, to say, yes, we're going to make a change. We do everything possible. We're humans. We have our biases. Everyone has their biases. But we do everything possible to bring it to you guys straight and narrow. And that's why we have done that. Let's take a look now at the 538 forecast for the Senate. They're pretty much unchanged from last week. 64% chance for them that the Democrats hold on to the Senate. 36% chance that the Republicans capture the Senate. Let's take a look at their model for the House. Again, pretty much unchanged. A tick up for Republicans, actually. 78% chance that the Republicans take control of the House. Only 22% chance that the Democrats hold on to the House. A lot of folks have been writing in, and we're going to talk a little bit about this guy, Rich Barris, who runs Big Data Poll. We are big fans of Big Data Poll here. A lot of mainstream folks are not, right and left. Uh-oh. Establishment Democrats and Republicans hate this guy, which is probably why we love him.
Yeah.
Because we trust the mainstream establishment political machine about as much as you could probably throw me in distance. So he does something called the Public Polling Project, which I really like what he does, because he gets paid to do this for a living. He does polling. He's a pollster. But he does this public polling stuff that he does for the folks, and I really like that. Doesn't look like he's updated it since May 26 for the generic ballot, but he has Republicans ahead fairly significantly. I'm hoping that he updates his stuff sooner than later. I know that I think it's like crowdsourced maybe or funded. I'm not 100% sure how he does that, but it costs money to poll. So, he does this for the folks. I don't know how it's funded, sponsored, or whatever. But we have a lot of faith in this guy. We don't, his polls are not implemented in our model because we have to analyze 10 polls in the last 4 election cycles to be rated. And if your poll is not rated, it doesn't go into our model. But this guy would be highly rated if we had 10 polls that we could analyze and evaluate against election results. We really like how he approaches polling. We love his methodology. He gave us a shout out. We're going to talk about that at the end of the show on Twitter yesterday, which we're super appreciative of. Jeff and I poured one back for Rich Bear. So, at the People's Pundit, that is his handle, his Twitter handle. We do appreciate that. But we're going to start showing everybody. So many right wingers write in and listen. They're like, why do you keep showing 538 and Nate Silver's model? We can't stand this guy. Blah, blah, blah. He's so fake and all this. Because we often disagree with 538, we're showing you guys 538 so you can have more than just our echo chamber. We don't like echo chambers. We don't like it when all you folks out there, everyone's welcome here at the Oasis of Reality. You can sit down at the bar. We're open to all because we're trying to give you a break from all that bullshit echo chamber stuff out there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And so we're showing you 538 in the mainstream folks so you can see the difference for 2 reasons. Because if they're right and we are wrong, we don't believe that's going to be the case, but we'll own it. And if we're right and they're wrong, we're going to freaking crush them at the end of the election on this podcast. Mm-hmm. Okay? There's a method to the madness.
We're giving diversity.
We're being diverse. We're being woke. We're being woke. So this is kind of a big data poll. It's bigdatapoll.com. You can look at their public polling projects right there on the main page. You just got to scroll down. Very interesting stuff. Again, we really like the way this guy does his business, and we really like how much he pisses off the establishment right and the establishment left. We love it. That's
the best part.
We love it. And here's the deal. We kind of work for the establishment in our day jobs. Like we work like, and there's not, this of me, there's not a day that goes by that I just die inside a little bit with how the establishment does business with elections. I just wish for the love of God, somebody would open their eyes to the reality of what people are saying, thinking, and how they vote. But these people are so stuck 10 and 20 years ago of how things were. They just don't understand the growing populist movement in this country, both right and left.
Nope, they don't get it at all. People think you have to say it a certain way for someone to want to vote for you, but that makes it even worse. Just give it to them straight.
You would think it would be that simple.
Yeah.
But nothing passes the logic test in in the government or in the establishment land. Real quick, because we're going long as usual, because I run my mouth too much. Here is the updated election scoreboard, updated yesterday, August 23rd. We currently have the state of the race for the U.S. Senate, 51 for the Democrats, 49 for Republicans. That's a net gain of 1 seat for the Democrats. The U.S. House of Representatives, we have it at 226 seats projected for the Republicans, 209 seats projected for the Democrats. That's a net gain of 13 seats for the Republican Party. And for the governor's races, 26 governor's mansions for Republicans, 24 for the Democrats. State legislatures unchanged, 32 upper chambers for Republicans, 18 for the Democrats. Lower chambers, 33 for the GOP, 16 for the Dems. And that is the election snapshot this week. Without any further ado, we're going to bring in my friend, a 30-plus year law enforcement professional, someone who's put on the uniform to protect and serve, and he is truly passionate about his work. I'm very interested to get his perspective on the way things are for law enforcement in these divided times, these very negative times for law enforcement across the country. I'm very excited to get his perspective. Without further ado, let's go to my interview with Jeramy Young right now. And joining me now here on the Election Recon podcast, first time, surprisingly, because he's a dear friend of mine, and there's a little bit of a politico. You know, I don't think he's as addicted to the politics as I am, but he's a little bit of a politico, former small town elected official, kind of like myself, former mayor of Houston, California. He's a law enforcement professional, a career law enforcement professional. He's a police chief currently. Joining us now on the Election Recon podcast is Jeramy Young. Jeramy, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be here today.
Thanks a lot, Josh, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. You made me sound very important, so I appreciate that.
Well, you're important to some people. You know, your friends, your wife, your kids adore you. That's true.
Most of the time.
Yeah, that's true. I think they prefer their mom, but that's okay. But then again, their mom is like their teacher and principal. So maybe during this time of the year, you're their favorite.
That's true. That's true. It kind of goes in spurts, but right now I'm highly favored being the first week of school for her.
Yeah, I can imagine. How long? Take us just real quick, Jeramy, through your law enforcement, career, and just Reader's Digest wise, your career path and how you got to become really, kind of at the top of the game of your industry. You are now a chief of police, which is, probably the end career goal for a lot of police officers. So kind of take us through your motivations to be a cop and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I don't even know if you know this, Josh, but I started out as a volunteer firefighter in Ceres. And at that time, they were public safety. So I engaged a lot with the police officers there, and I spent 5 years as a volunteer firefighter EMT. And like I said, I made a lot of really good friends in the police department. And so I became a reserve police officer as well, just kind of testing both careers out because I really like both. But as it turns out, I picked law enforcement and went to the academy in the early 90s. Started in Ceres as a reserve police officer and then worked at a few agencies. My first full-time job was over in Seaside. So, I worked there, came back to Modesto, and have worked in law enforcement for almost 30 years now, doing various assignments. And like you said, now I'm a police chief. Never really thought that was what I wanted to do at the time as far as promote that high, but I guess, as you get into it, you kind of move along and your goals change, and the reason that to get promoted is always changing. But for me, I just wanted to make the biggest difference I could and try to give back to all the people I worked with along the way. And I see some of these kids we're hiring today, and I think, man, they're getting younger and younger, but really I'm the one getting older. So that's kind of the way I got to where I am, my career basically in a nutshell. And so it's been a really rewarding career. The reason I got into it in the beginning, actually both careers, is because I wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted a job that was different every day. But at the end of the day, I wanted that feeling that I'm making a difference and I'm helping people.
So obviously everything changes in life. And 30 years ago, being a police officer in the United States, in California, is very different than being a police officer today. There's a lot that goes with that. It's culture, it's society, but a lot of that is also politics and the laws that govern. What are the major differences, in your opinion, between being a cop 30 years ago and being a cop today?
Well, I think being a cop 30 years ago was difficult, but nothing like it is today. The expectations on the profession are higher than they've ever been, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing that we have the most professional law enforcement profession in the country here in California. And I feel like we've raised the bar a lot. We've made a lot of changes. There's a lot more technology. But really today, the biggest difference is the engagement, the interest in the public to make sure that they're being treated fairly. And so I think a lot of those things are really positive changes, but they've made it very difficult for the new officers to kind of take all that in and do the right thing every time. Because at the end of the day, we're all human and we hire humans and we all make mistakes. And so that's really been the biggest end goal, is to try to make sure these new officers, the officers that are coming through the chain, are as prepared as humanly possible to be perfect for every call.
I think you really said it. And it really seems to me that the standards and expectations on law enforcement, which I believe should be high. I of those people who believe that the standards and expectations on those people who get to carry a gun and have the powers of arrest should be higher than your average citizen. Well, that goes without saying in my book. But there almost seems to be this unrealistic expectation, because the one correlation between a law enforcement officer and a soldier is the split-second decisions that we sometimes have to make, unfortunately, in self-defense or defense of others. And I think that's a strong correlation between the veteran community and the law enforcement community there. And a lot of veterans, I think, are more empathetic to police officers because we understand how split second, that's just not a term of phrase. It's not a cliche, and how tough that could be and how mistakes can be tragic and fatal and life-changing for all involved. But also, from our point of view, that the general populace has no idea what it's like to be in that position. And they often come to judgment without understanding everything about what it's like to be in that position. Do you feel that part of the reason why we have a police officer shortage, not just nationally, but also here in California, it appears to me that a lot of people who are considering perhaps a career in law enforcement are seeing everything on the news, the media coverage, the attention, most of it negative on police officers today, and saying, nope, that's not the career for me. And thus, maybe the best and brightest that could possibly be coming in, the people who may be passionate about serving their communities, are making other choices. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's just a media-driven narrative today?
No, I definitely think it's true. I mean, I see the recruiting issues all the time and the vacancy rates, across the nation. Most familiar with California, but it's happening all over the place. But really, there's always been ebbs and flows as far as public support, public opinion of law enforcement. I worked through Rodney King. I remember at that time there was also public opinion that depreciated to some degree, and then it's risen up too after 9/11 and some of those things. So these things happen, over a time, but the thing that's true is that we've never been needed more. And I think we just haven't done, as far as law enforcement profession, done a good job of telling the whole story. And so if you know the whole story, I think we're okay, because while there's mistakes that officers make, and some of them are terrible and tragic and criminal, that's not the majority of the cases. And while, one is always too many, what tends to happen is the perspective is skewed, because when the national media and the media really hammer these tragic incidents, it makes people think that, wow, that must happen all the time. This is really a problem in law enforcement that's widespread. And we know that's not the case. So we work all the time to minimize those, and we never want to make a mistake. But we have to do a better job talking about the work that we do, giving people the best view into the work we do. And I think at the end of the day, if we really tell our story, talk about those difficulties, talk about the challenges, talk about the fact that the people you see in uniform wearing a badge out on the street are not robots who are trained perfectly. They're humans who have the same type of problems that everyone else has. Then I think we can connect with people in a better way, and try to shore up that recruiting gap, and the fact that, a lot of younger people are not choosing this career. But, having said that, if I look back over the 30-year career, I wouldn't change anything. I think this is a great career. I still recommend people get into it. And I would continue to support people making this choice, because it is the best job in the world. There's no other job that I'm familiar with where you can go out every single day and make an impact over and over and over again in somebody's life.
I want to transition a little bit more to the politics right now, but I think to that point, it's very clear that, in the data, and as everybody who listens to the show, and I know, as you know, I'm a data geek, Jeremy, and I geek out, and my head's in statistics, data, polling, etc., pretty much all the time. And what's fascinating to me is, while the media may have people believe that there's this big outpouring, this big anti-police movement, and there's certainly a vocal anti-police movement right now in society, and like you said, that ebbs and flows. It hasn't been the first time in American history that's happened. I would say that there has never been a more stronger yearning, a more stronger desire of the populace across all demographics to have a strong and stable and working police force. Not even in inner cities are we seeing a desire to abolish police forces. If anything, we are seeing a backlash to that call, saying, no, we don't want cops to go away. We just want cops to do their jobs better from the inner cities. Crime is up everywhere. And what's really interesting is that the voters across this country aren't blaming the police for rising crime. They're blaming government for rising crime. I'm curious to know what, I mean, what are the cops on the street? What do folks like you? I mean, do you guys feel like government policy? Do you feel like decisions from Washington and Sacramento are tying your hands on doing your job better? Do you feel like lawmakers are interfering too much in the work of law enforcement professionals in the world today?
Yes. I think that the officers on the street are going out there every day, the ones that I'm familiar with, and they're working hard every day to protect the community. That's what they raised their hand and swore to do. And they're doing that part. But, there's got to be a higher level of accountability. And I'm all for giving somebody a second chance, a third chance even. But at some point, there's a percentage of the population who absolutely will not comply with laws, who will victimize the weakest in our community. And those people have to be separated from society as a whole. and we're not doing a good job at that right now. And the fact that we constantly deal with the same people over and over and over again. And so I know there's concern about incarceration and the rates, but I feel like the scale has tipped too far in the suspects and the criminals' point of view. And we need to bring it back to balance. We have to remember there's victims, and one of these criminals create sometimes 10, 20, 30, 40 victims. And that's unacceptable. There's nowhere in this country that we should fear to walk, to dine, to drive, to take our kids. And that's not the case today. And so I really feel like we need to bring some more balance to the criminal justice system. We need to make sure the DAs prosecute the laws properly. And for those who are felons and who have committed serious crimes, they shouldn't be among us to victimize more people.
Yeah, man, I think that's well said. I think folks, we've gotten away. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I feel like there was a genuine respect for the populace of remembering the fact that a lot of these guys who wear the badge, folks, a lot of these guys who put on this uniform every day, many of them working overtime because of the shortage of cops across this country. I think it's important that we remember these guys are out on holidays when we have time off, when we're on R&R, when we're relaxing. A lot of these guys are away from their families, still doing their jobs, still making sure your communities are safe. And there should be a certain respect and reverence for folks who do that. And I think that anybody who thinks that, this defund the police movement or abolish the police movement has any majority traction in the country, but that's a losing issue. And I think politically, we all know there's a reason why the mainstream media has really gotten away from this issue, because the voters themselves have turned hard away from this issue, because it's not at all what they were originally talking about 2 summers ago. And so, I just think, Jeremy, I don't know if you agree or disagree with that assessment, but I think both can be true. You can both respect, want, and desire, and have reverence for the police force, and still demand high accountability and professionalism.
Well, that's right. It has to be that way. We, like you said earlier, and we've talked about, law enforcement officers have a tremendous amount of power. They're the only ones who can take a life, to take somebody's freedom at any moment, and that's a huge burden. And with that, there has to be an enormous amount of oversight and very, very high expectations. And so we can have both, and we should have both. And I feel like we're doing a great job with that. And you mentioned the officers who go out and work, 24/7. And I just wanted to also mention the families who support them, who are behind the scenes. But all these people out there wouldn't be able to do it without a family who's very understanding and willing to support the people, even through the hardest time. They never put the badge on their shirt, but they're a critical part of that team.
Without question. Jeremy, thank you so much for sharing your insights. Very, inspirational, but also insightful. Always when I'm talking with you about this industry and this part of the world. Thank you for all you do. Please stay safe. Keep up the good work. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. I hope you'll come back on the show someday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Jeremy, for being with us. And that was Jeramy Young, my friend. First time here in the Oasis of Reality. Very interesting interview. Very interesting to get his thoughts on police work and how it's evolving, how it should be, where it's got to go. I think, a guy who started this 30 years ago and has been through the ups and downs, you heard him say he was there as a young man with the Rodney King riots. He experienced the love affair with the police after 9/11, and back to this racial divide that we're in the country today, and the defund the police movement, everything that's going on today, the ups and downs, and and where police is going. And you heard him say, like, there's so much challenges now because a lot of young people from your generation are looking at, like, do I want to become a police officer? Even if I think that's a good job, man.
There's a lot, yeah.
Do I want that job? And here's the deal. No matter what you personally think about police folks, we need police officers.
We do.
And here's something in the polling for you Democrat partisan zealots out there that think less police is better. Not even in the inner cities among minorities is there a majority voice in the polling for no police departments. In fact, they want more, better trained, better equipped, perhaps more community policing, but nowhere are inner city voters saying, please take the police away. It's crazy. My heart goes out to cops everywhere, personally. It's a very thankless job. And listen, there's bad apples everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think the media in particular would be well advised to quit demonizing police for less than 1% of their population acting a fool. I have no problem with people, as I said to Jeremy, I have no problem with people demanding a higher accountability for police officers. None whatsoever. I have a big problem with people who paint in these big, broad brushstrokes.
It's easy to push negativity, but they don't see the positives. All they see is the negative.
It's just dangerous.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. This is how, like, I know it's cliche to say it, but this is how the shit from World War II got started. This is how the hatred of the Jewish population in that part of the world at that time started. These huge brushstrokes of if one Jewish person did something bad, stupid, or criminal, then all Jewish people are responsible. I mean, there's literally a whole country that believed that they lost World War I because of the Jewish people, which there's zero historical fact or to support that, by the way. There was then, there is now. Zero historical fact to that. But when you talk like this, and you get into your echo chambers, and you just have this tribalistic hatred that we see in this country today, this is what you get. Be careful what you wish for. Let's go to the Grunt's perspective, and it's a big one today.
Oh, Lord, help us.
We're gonna first talk about Jersey City Councilwoman, a Democrat, by the way, Amy DeGise. I don't know her name. Amy DeGise, let's say, who literally hit one of her own constituents. We talked about this last week. I said I didn't know who was, like, at fault for the accident. Well, the guy who was hit admits that he ran a red light on his bicycle. We're going to see it live here in just a second. Admits that he was in the wrong in that he ran a red light. She had the green light. But the problem here is she hit a man and left the scene. She didn't even stop. She didn't even pump the brakes. Alyssa?
At least someone took accountability. He owned his part, but she doesn't want to.
Well, that's because the working class common folk are, pieces of garbage. That's what this woman is to me. She's everything wrong with politics and politicians, elitism, and leaders in this country. Let's take a look now. Let's just show you raw. This is from the Law and Crime channel on YouTube. Straight up what happened. Those of you watching on YouTube, you can see it with your own eyes. Those of you listening on the podcast, you can hear it with your own ears. This is second by second exactly what happened when this city councilwoman, an elected representative of this man, ran him over with her car and didn't even stop. Didn't even give two craps about this guy. Didn't know if this guy was alive, dead, seriously injured or not. Let's go to the clip right now.
A hit and run caught on camera shows a New Jersey city councilwoman fleeing the scene of a crash. It happened at about 8 o'clock in the morning on July 19th. The Jersey City closed circuit TV cameras caught the crash on video, showing a Nissan Rogue slam into a biker and then drive off. Video shows the biker get hit and flip over twice in the air, all as their shoes fly off into the street. The bike is then thrown over to a nearby curb. Seconds later, the biker slowly gets up and a crowd begins to appear. A witness then collects the biker's shoes as the biker rests on the sidewalk. The Jersey City mayor's office now says the person behind the wheel was Councilwoman Amy DeGise. The biker was identified as 29-year-old Andrew Black, who told news outlets he's experiencing shoulder, hip, and ankle pain since the crash. Black admits DeGise had a green light and that he pedaled through a red light, but says that doesn't excuse her from driving off. Jersey City residents have now taken to social media calling for DeGise's immediate resignation. For the latest developments in this story,
forget the fact that she's an elected leader, Alyssa. Forget the fact that she should be held to a higher standard. Mm-hmm. Forget the fact. Throw all that out for just a minute. The lack of humanity of this woman who is selfish and narcissistic and sociopathic at best. That's the best I can do for her. Is evil and psychotic at worst.
Yeah.
Can you ever imagine yourself, your fault, their fault, doesn't matter. Could you ever imagine yourself being involved in an accident like this? Where you may have unintentionally, intentionally, no fault of your own, your fault, whatever the circumstances, but you were a part of another person being harmed physically. Mm-hmm. Can you ever imagine yourself just leaving, just running, just not even giving one iota of a piece of shit about that guy?
Never. It's basic human nature to care and see if they're okay. I mean, for all she knew, she killed him, but she kept going. She
didn't even pump the brakes, man. She just hit the guy and went. She didn't stop, turn around, nothing. She didn't even slow down. Let's hear from Her Royal Elitist Highness, Council Member DeGise, right now. It's her arrogance, her insolence. When 50 people showed up to the city council meeting and demanded she resign. 50 people showed up to the council meeting and said, "Good. You got to quit. You got to go." Because this isn't about politics. This is about humanity now. You are not human enough. You don't have enough humanity in your heart. You don't have enough moral fiber or character to sit on the dais and represent us in Jersey City. That's what these 50 people said, and I agree with them. This is her response.
I am grateful that no one was seriously injured, and I feel horrible about that situation. But there
not
is
horrible
a
enough
court
to stop.
process.
And so Amy DeGise defiantly announced she would not relinquish her seat. DeGise's first comment since the accident caught the crowd off guard. She described vulgar insults and death threats she's received.
I hope no one here is ever subjected to this amount of trauma. When the legal process in traffic court is finished, I will have more to say, and I can address outstanding concerns and questions. And in the meantime, I'm not resigning.
Despite what you may now be feeling, you are not the victim here. The victim is the person who was hit and driven away from without hesitation.
Speakers who...
That guy right there, Will Vandenberg, citizen speaker, he said it right. The audacity, the arrogance of this woman to claim that she's a victim. She literally had it makes my skin boil. I served 2 terms as a city councilman. If I ever hit this person I would never do it, but let's just say I just panicked. I was, oh crap, I hit somebody. I just, fight or flight or whatever, and you just ran. I would have resigned 10 minutes later out of just the pure guilt. The audacity of this Democrat city councilwoman from Jersey City. And there's a reason why I'm being partisan about it, and it's going to come up in the second half of this segment. But this woman's arrogance, I hope that nobody has to go through the trauma that I've been through. Are you kidding me? You literally hit a man with your vehicle.
I'm sure he has a lot more trauma from this than her.
If he died, it would be vehicular manslaughter.
But she's a victim. She's been subjected to bullying.
The double standard in this country by the media, the double standard in politics. If this was a Republican, if this was a conservative, If this was a council person who was a white male who wore a red hat that said, "Make America Great Again," the moral outrage across the country, especially if he hit a woman, especially if he hit a person of color.
100 times worse. It would have been 100 people at that city council meeting.
It would have been 1,000. There would have been riots.
Yeah.
This is outrageous double standard. I can't believe this woman, what she did was bad enough, but to go back on the dais and act like she's a victim and, oh, I'm not resigning and I have nothing to say till the court process goes through, because you know what she's saying here, Alyssa. She's oh, he's at fault. He ran the light. I'm like, Jesus, excuse my French, but bitch, we all understand that. He even admitted it. The point I'm trying to make is no one's contesting the fact that he caused the accident. But we have a law in this country that says you cannot hit somebody and run away. There is human decency, and this woman should resign. And if she doesn't, and she's clearly not, I don't know what the recall laws are in New Jersey, but if there was ever grounds or cause for a recall of throwing someone's ass out of office forever,
it should be done.
It's this woman right here. It's this woman right here. But I want to touch a little bit, as pissed as I am about that. I want to talk about the double standards. Pat Ryan, who just won this special election we talked about in the New York 19th, who believes he won because he took a strong, bold stance on abortion, and he did. Very pro-choice stand. He didn't win. He didn't win that seat because of that. Nothing in the exit polling, nothing in the actual election results convinced me of that. He won because low propensity Trump Republican voters didn't show up to vote. Period, point blank. That's why this guy won an election everybody, including him, thought he was going to lose Tuesday night. And on MSNBC, an echo chamber of the left, the Alex Wagner Tonight Show, this guy just claimed he won on all these local issues and all this stuff. But nope, bad orange man. Let's bring it in, because that's the national narrative that we're driving now. Let's see what Mr. Pat Ryan, a Army officer and veteran, by the way, who I'm about to skewer for these comments, this hack. Let's listen to his comments on MSNBC.
Are legitimately concerned about freedoms. Some people sort of read into that democratic norms, elections, the existential threat posed by Donald Trump. Right. Is he someone you talked about on the campaign trail? There are so many investigations right now. I think it makes people's heads spin, right? And it's, I think, worth covering, because this is a former president of the United States. Of course. As a politician in a swing district who's trying to win a seat, hold on to a seat, how much are the words Donald Trump uttered?
I mean, we are not afraid to call out Donald Trump as someone who I believe is essentially traitorous at this point. I mean, I had a top secret clearance. I was an Army officer. If I had done what he did, I would have been in jail, 100%. No questions asked. And
this guy is a hack. He probably is going to win re-election in his newly drawn district. It's a little bit more Democratic. He ran a very strong campaign. He was a very popular county commissioner. He's probably going to win re-election in November. But this guy is a net negative in an addition to Congress. And I'm going to tell you why. That's strong criticism. I don't think I've ever criticized a veteran ever publicly like this. But I'm sick and tired of the double standard here. I have no problem with this guy having a position on Donald Trump and the classified documents and that whole debate, and we'll let everybody debate that till it's blue in the face. I personally don't think that Donald Trump is going to be indicted or prosecuted for this. I do agree with Pat Ryan, Alyssa. If him or I did what Donald Trump did, we would have been charged and arrested. There's no question in my mind about that. It's a double standard. There's multiple, triple, quadruple standards, really. He probably may have gotten a little bit more away with it because he's an officer, but as an enlisted guy, I definitely would have been punished. Officers get away with a lot more than enlisted guys. That's just a fact. But he knows. He knows. There's a reason I stopped the screen right here, because you could see this is a very good body language moment. He knows. He just sold out. He's such a hypocrite. His hypocrisy, he's dealing right there in that moment with the hypocrisy all over his face because he knows there's another side of this story. And I'm going to do it right now. This is former FBI Director James Comey, after he concluded his investigation of then presidential candidate Hillary Clinton in 2016 about her doing the exact same thing, perhaps even on a more dangerous scale. Let's hear what Director Comey had to say about when then Secretary Hillary Clinton, candidate for president of the United States, committed the same exact crime that these Democrats are accusing Donald Trump of.
Our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. Prosecutors necessarily weigh a number of factors before deciding whether to bring charges. There are obvious considerations like the strength of the evidence, especially regarding intent. Responsible decisions also consider the context of a person's actions and how similar situations have been handled in the past. In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts.
That a clip from CNN back in 2016. I was angry back then that Hillary Clinton, for something that my enlisted butt would have been sent to Fort Leavenworth for, Hillary Clinton got away scot-free and damn near became president of the United States by the slimmest of margins.
Mm-hmm.
This probably cost her the election.
Probably. But we can't have a double standard like that.
But we're going to send armed, not one time did armed FBI agents raid Hillary Clinton's home for all this stuff. Not one time.
Nope.
But we're going to send armed FBI agents to Mar-a-Lago, Florida and raid Donald Trump's home just because he's Donald Trump and we don't like him. And we're in power. We here being the Democratic Party. Dangerous.
It is. In a time where people are so distrustful of their government, that really was not a good decision to make, especially to come up with nothing.
There should be one, justice should be blind. There's a reason why Lady Justice and all of our statues and all of our symbols of justice wears a blindfold. Because justice should be blind to class. Justice should be blind to politics. Justice should be blind to power. And it is not that way in America anymore, and it is sad. Maybe it never was, but my point is, this is egregiously hypocritical.
And people see that. People have a reason to be upset.
It goes back to this Councilwoman DeGise from Jersey City. It goes back to our popular culture. It goes back to our mainstream media who continue to press a double standard. The fact that this story is not all over national news, the fact that the pressure is not completely overwhelming for this heartless woman to resign, this heartless individual, this heartless person who doesn't deserve to be elected to a Boy Scout troop leader, let alone sit on the Jersey City Council. All Democrats should be disavowing this woman. All Republicans should be. It shouldn't even be political. This woman should be gone. We have to apply the standards of justice and morality equally across the board. It is one of the major problems in the decline of America today. It's unconscionable. It's un-American, this double standard. And everyone on both sides of the aisle, on both sides of the political spectrum, have got to do better and have got to hold everyone accountable under the same standards of justice and the law, period, point blank, regardless of politics. And until this country figures that out, we're in deep, deep trouble. And that's the Grunt's perspective this week. Any final thoughts on that one?
No, I think you covered it all. We can't hold someone to one standard and not someone the other. We have to be equal, or else it's just going to keep going down the same path that we've been going down.
I don't get it. To me, it's just common sense, but I guess nothing the government does anymore passes the logic test. So
nope.
I should quit. I should quit being disappointed by it, because it's just it's not the exception, it's the rule now. Good grief. Alyssa, let's go to the 3-pointer segment. This is the part of the show where you guys get to write in and ask us questions or make pithy statements, send us your hate. We feed off of it here. You can write anything you want. We have very thick skin. We are a project run by veterans. We do not mind. We love it. We love it when you send in the hate. Write us at Elect Recon. That's elect singular, electrecon@gmail.com. You can DM us or add us at social media. That's at Election Recon. At Election Recon. That's on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. You can comment. You can comment at us at YouTube. However you want. Go ahead and reach out to us. We even have a comments page on our website at electionrecon.com. We appreciate a lot of folks writing in now here in our 6th episode. We can't get to everybody. We reserve the right to use a comment that we don't use this week in a future show or future week. Please keep writing in. We love hearing from all of you. Alyssa, let's go with the first question.
Okay, the first one says, I'm very disappointed that you've changed your model to placate the right. I've always appreciated the fact that Election Recon just presents the facts and takes all the polls as is. Your choice to weigh the polls you don't like lower is hypocritical to what you say you are. You lost a fan by Stephanie M. in Brown Deer, Wisconsin.
Well, Stephanie, thank you for writing in. I think I explained that earlier in the show. It wasn't about placating the right, whether you want to believe that or not. And I'm sure from it appears to me, I don't want to assume, but I'm going to guess that you're more on the liberal side of things. It's about trying to get it right. And the decisions that we have made in the last 2 years, in 2020 and 2021, have been pretty good. Our model has been pretty much right on target in both the last 2 elections. So until we get it wrong, I think you should trust us that we know what we're doing and we're trying to do it right. And so it's not about placating the right. And I'm sorry we lost you as a fan, but it's about getting it right. And we believe the polls right now are even worse. They're the worst we've ever seen it. The polling industry doesn't learn. They have been wrong so many times in the last decade. And they obfuscate, they make excuses, they spin. But they're just wrong time and time and time again. And that's why we have our model is to hedge against that crap. And I'm not trying to paint every pollster. There are good pollsters out there. But more and more, the polls that the media puts up on their TV screens, your TV screens or your streaming services, day in and day out, are egregiously corrupt. Go look at our Twitter feed. We're not afraid of being wrong. If we're wrong, we'll own it and we'll move to fix it. We won't obfuscate or make excuses like the mainstream media. But until we're wrong, your criticism goes in one ear and out the other, because so far we've been right twice in a row. But as Lauren always says, twice does not a pattern make. So we're trying to be right a third time.
Then we'll have a pattern.
Next question, Alyssa.
It's from DevilDog99 in San Diego, California, and he said, I like that you added Alyssa to the show, but do you think you can get the microphone out of her face in the camera shot so we can at least see her face? So effing disrespectful, you Army guys. F-man, seriously, fix it.
Oh, Jesus. I love Marines.
I'm okay, you guys, I promise.
We got a lot of that, actually, this week. First off, you're right. Second off, I don't think anybody understands what a low budget operation this is. We don't make any money here, man. This is low budget. The fact that we even have professional microphones is nothing short of a miracle. In this little home podcast studio that we do the show out of, which we love doing, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes. The answer is yes. As you can see,
we fixed it.
We fixed it.
I'm soft-spoken for once. I have to sit closer to the microphone so that you guys can hear me.
That was a good one, man. I really do appreciate it. It is the last 2 episodes you have had, the microphone's been like... She was on probation, man. Okay, mm-hmm. We had a censor. She can't have it all. Okay, you gotta make your bones around here. Thank you for writing in, Devil Dog. I appreciate that you're a fan of the show. Obviously, you get our sense of humor. That was great. Of course, I know that you look up to me. If only that my ASVAB score is probably 3 times as high as yours. And, I only say that because Marines need heroes too. Thanks for writing in. Next question.
This next one is from Twitter. It says, Democrats aren't going to sweep Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. That's stupid, model or no model. From Kurt.
Kurt, okay. That's your opinion. I'd like to see the facts to back that up. Listen, I'm not saying it's doom and gloom for the Republican Party yet in this election, but there are some serious warning signs all over the country for Republicans right now. Special election after special election has not gone the Republicans' way. That is just a fact. Even in the special elections Republicans have won, they have won with lesser margins than you would expect in a red wave year. This primary season has put a nail in the coffin of the debate of whose party is this. This remains Donald Trump's Republican Party, whether you like it or you don't. He is the kingmaker more times than not. There have been some exceptions to that rule, but the general rule is who Donald Trump endorses wins. And in the elections that President Donald Trump plays in, more Republican voters turn out. The real problem for Republicans right now is turnout. If Trump's not involved or not on the ballot, Republican excitement and enthusiasm goes down. If you don't think Democrats can sweep Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, you're wrong. That is a legitimate possibility. Those are going to be close elections. Pennsylvania, I don't agree with the polling that shows Fetterman up by these egregious margins right now. I don't agree with that. I think it's a much closer race than the polls show. Herschel Walker is not a particularly great candidate for the Republican Party. That's in Georgia. And our model certainly suggests that the edge is with Cortez Masto in Nevada and Kelly in Arizona, who are proven winners in those states, by the way. But it's also equally likely the Republicans can sweep those 4 states. Could be somewhere in the middle. So you're right. I guess probabilistically that Republicans win one of those 4 states is more likely than not. But we don't sit there in our model and go, well, what are the likelihood that Republicans are going to win one of these 4 states? We take the state by state. And right now, our model suggests that the Democrats have an edge in those 4 states. That's just the way it is. It may look very different by Election Day. Maybe Republicans are tilt in those 4 states by Election Day. I would suggest come check on November 7th, the day before the election, where our model is, and if we're wrong, come back and beat the hell out of us on social media. You have every right to. If we're wrong, come beat us up. Thank you for writing in, Kurt, or tweeting, Kurt. Thank you for tweeting. Alyssa, I want to finish the show. This is going to be the longest show so far this season, but I want to finish the show by just giving a thank you to Richard Barris from the People's Pundit Daily. Inside the Numbers with Richard Barris is his podcast / YouTube show. Mm-hmm. He's a legend among those of us who are suspicious of the mainstream media operations. I think his approach to polling is not just innovative. I think he understands the way of the world more than most pollsters out there. I think he's proven right. I think he's proven right far more often than he's proven wrong. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of respect for this guy, and he gave us a pretty big compliment on social media last night, and I just want to thank him. So thank you to Richard Barris. We don't know each other. We've never talked. He's not paying me to say this, but I think when respect is given, it should be returned, and we have a lot of respect for that guy. And if you're hearing a dog in the background, that's Alyssa's dog trying to get on the podcast.
She just wanted to be included.
Upset that she's not included.
She was also saying thank you.
All right. Well, this has been episode 6 of the Election Recon podcast. I'm Josh. That's Alyssa. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week.